Okay, so I wanted to go over 4 rules for tools. And these are criteria that were served us for a number of growing seasons when it comes to picking tools. First is usefulness. And how many times did we touch the tool, or will we actually use the tool? This is the primary metric when deciding when to buy tools or not to buy tools. At this point, there are so many tools on the market. It's just an amazing selection to take a lot of the burden, a lot of the grunt work out of our work. However, you can add a lot of waste and cost if you're not careful with your tool selection. And we found that the best way to decide whether to keep a tool or not, where to buy a tool, is how many times we're going to use it. And we want to actually have a few tools that get a lot of work accomplished. Number 2 is, does the tool add complexity or contribute simplicity? And I'll go over the LED system and talk about that concept, because when you add new technology into your greenhouse, especially, and tractor implements, there's a lot of ways to add complexity, and we're always leaning towards simplifying our systems every growing season, because we want to focus on our value-adding activities and growing food and making money. And the wrong question to ask here is, what can this tool or piece of technology or iPhone app do? And the right thing to ask is, what can this tool do for me? And so you want to be greedy here and not get too romantic, not have a too romanticized view of these new tools on the market, because you need to ask, how is this going to fit my unique context and growing system? And just because it's a glamorous, expensive tool doesn't mean it's going to add value in your case. The third rule is the technology or the tool should have a human face behind it. And so there's a lean concept. And the idea behind this is that tools should interface very smoothly with the humans using it. And so we like to have tools that everyone on the farm can use. And it's the reason we actually got rid of our larger, heavier size BCS walk-behind tractors and opted for the 710, the smallest walk-behind, because then everyone can use it. And I know a lot of growers who have gone out and bought walk-behind tractors or other tools that they simply couldn't use, they didn't know how to use, or is too big and cumbersome for them to use. And so ease of use is really important for us, and simple tools that are non-complicated. And then the last rule here is the 10% rule. And this is a guideline we've used, and it has helped us. And I know a lot of other growers use this too, but in general, we spend 10% of our profits on tools. And so if we are making $100,000 a year, we're going to try and devote $10,000 to the next growing season to upgrading the tools that we use on our farm. If we spend more than that 10%, it's probably too much, and it's going to eat into the money we have for us. And if we spend less than that, we might not be keeping up, developing and taking advantage of some of the newer technologies that are on the market and that keep us competitive. Okay, so I want to dive right into the LED section here. And I'm in my propagation greenhouse, and there's LEDs behind me here. I'm not sure if you can see it at this point, but I will share this screen, or Diego can help me share this screen once I go over the advantages of LEDs. And we spent quite a bit of the winter doing research for LED systems. And at this point, it's just a Wild West marketplace because of the marijuana market. And Colorado, California, and all these states that have legalized cannabis production has meant that LED availability has taken off, and there's just a lot available. And there are and the price point, and that's putting pressure on the prices. So the price point is now down to where we can, as growers who are growing crops that are worth a bit less than marijuana, we can actually take advantage of these technologies. So they're going to use 60% less energy than CFLs. So they're low cost from an energy standpoint. And there's all types of LEDs. I'll show you some of the types, but they're very flexible in their installation. And then product longevity. They're going to last 16 years on average versus 8 years for CFLs, and certainly less than that for incandescents. Okay, so there's basically 3 types of LEDs on the market. There's more than this, but these are 3 common types. I'm going to go over each of these 3 because I think these 3 are ones that can work on small farms. So first would be ballast fixtures. Have a box around them and probably a fan inside, any tape or strips, and an integrated tube fixtures, which is the type that we opted to go with. And my son and I were at Menards just this morning, and it's just amazing that what they're doing with LEDs now. Here's in front of a fake maple tree with LED leaves. And so I show this partly just to show how cute my kid is, and also to demonstrate the idea that we can integrate LEDs into our growing systems in very creative ways. I saw this and immediately saw a tomato plant with LEDs wrapped around it like a Christmas tree. And took this picture at Menards this morning too. There's flexible rope lights and like I said, tapes. There's all kinds of configurations. That's what's kind of so exciting about the market, is the creative uses for these products. So some LED 101 is it's important to understand how we measure the light coming off LEDs. The blue light is for vegetative growth and the red light is for fruiting. So LEDs are a bit unique in that the different low emissivity devices put out one true spectrum, and there are several colors, but for what we're dealing with here, you want to look for blue and red, and you can buy just blue fixtures. You can buy just red fixtures. Most growers are going to find some combination to be of what they're looking for when you're shopping. And how to measure these is important because you can't rely on wattage and you can't rely on lumens. Okay, a lumen, so a wattage is obviously the amount of energy it uses. That says nothing about how much light the thing puts out. You can have a very inefficient product that uses a lot of energy that puts a lot of light out, and vice versa. So it's just not the right metric. So lumens is also not reliable. That's typically how we measure light from light bulbs and light fixtures. However, with LEDs, so a lumen is the light produced within a range of what humans can see. So our human visual response. And so with LEDs, we have different spectrums of light that plants need that humans don't need, and we can be efficient with our LEDs by using just the blue and the reds and skipping the yellows and the whites and some of the other colors that are more beneficial for humans, okay? And so we measure LEDs by PARs, photosynthetically available radiation, okay? And plants need 400 to 700 nanometers, and I show you some good PAR ratings here when you're shopping. 200, 400 when you got young seedlings, 400 to 600 or more for later stage vegetable growth. And not all LED fixtures are giving you the PAR rating. PPFD is how they're calling this. And so you do have to read the fine print sometimes, call the company. And in general, I'm hesitant to recommend an LED fixture that you can't see what the PAR rating is. Okay, so in general, the red and the blue are often underrated. They're low. They can be low lumen, but they have a PAR rating. That's why PAR is important as your metric. Okay, so let me show you some actual LEDs here if I can get the technology Muda out of the way. Okay, so the ballast option, they're easy to hang. There's no assembly. You just get out of the box and start using it. However, there's a lot of parts, a lot of fans, and it's going to block the light too as you're trying to use it. Okay, so here's an example of a Chinese product on the market, and there are probably 2 million Chinese makers of these ballast type fixtures for the marijuana market. Okay, here's another example, and not that these aren't great fixtures. There's some good fixtures, and there's some very lousy fixtures, and this is the Wild West, and it's hard to know what to shop for. Here's what you should look for if this is the type of fixture you want. How many years has this manufacturer been in business? Is there warranty? Do they have an actual web page? Can you read the English? And do they give you the PPFD or the PAR rating? So here's one that has been recommended. The Mars Hydro would make these ballast type fixtures, mostly for the marijuana market. However, great for vegetables too. And you see they give you the PPFD rating on this. Okay, the top of the field right now is the Lumen Pro. And if you want to see the future of agriculture in this country, of leafy green production at least, go to the Lumen page, go down a long and depressing rabbit hole, as they're investors from other countries putting out massive greenhouses in the US using this technology to grow the types of stuff that we're growing, low cost of production here. But we're going to see these crops in our marketplaces because the technology is now there that people with a lot of money can invest in these systems and grow a lot of food. And what I'm trying to do is with less capital investment, take advantage of the technology. So another option, if you're good at tinkering with stuff, is tape or strip lights. These have the ultimate flexibility. It's like buying a strip of tape with some sticky tape behind it. Lower cost, potentially waterproof systems, and they're not going to block out the light. That's what I don't like about the Ballast, is that I want to be farming in my propagation house, take advantage of the sunlight. I don't like a light fixture shading my crops. And so if you're good at tinkering, that's a good option. So what we decided to go with is what they call integrated tube LEDs. Okay, so these kind of combine the best of both worlds. You got flexibility with them. They're just tubes, like T8s, like T8 fluorescents. However, you can just plug those tubes in and mount them however you want, and you're off and running. So there's some assembly involved, but it's manageable amount, and it's not going to block a ton of light, which we like. And a negative is that they're not necessarily waterproof. We decided to go with Noltz's Midwest Produce Supplies, what they offer, because we trust the products. They never offer products they're not using, so we know other growers are using them. And there's a low price point on this. And also they have they're a bit more durable than some of the others on the market. There's an aluminum casing around them. And for our kind of rougher environment, I know how tough I am on stuff. I thought it would be worth it to get a product that had aluminum housing around it. So I'll show you a picture of what's behind me here. And Diego, we can stop, if we can have the viewers just see this screen here, I can show them the picture behind me of the plants under these strip lights here. And essentially what I'm doing is I've taken leftover greenhouse parts, leftover wiggle wire channel, and then I mounted those LEDs to the wiggle wire channel. And then it's a cloudy afternoon here in Indiana. And oftentimes during early springtime, when I'm doing a lot of propagation, that's the problem, is that it's too cloudy in my propagation heights, and I want to supplement the sunlight. And so the fact that there's not a housing, a casing around these means that the grow lights are not blocking the sun from hitting my plants. They are a little bit, but not much. It's just a 1 inch of sun gets blocked. And so I can get the best of both worlds. I can get natural sun when the sun decides to come out in the afternoon for an hour or two, and I can still have my LEDs working here. Okay, so take a good look what's behind me. I've got kale plants here, and these are going into the greenhouse tomorrow afternoon. And you can see I got nice bushy leafy growth on these with LEDs as dark as it is here in the middle of the winter. And to be fair, these drew half their life under T8s, fluorescence, because these LEDs just came to me 2 or 3 weeks ago. So the second half of their life, when they're really putting on leafy growth, they've been under the LEDs here. But you can see that you get nice dark coloration. We got just the red and the blue, red and blue light spectrum in here. There's no other lights, no other colors in here. And this took me probably 15 minutes to set up. And like I said, using leftover greenhouse parts, you could certainly mount these to wood, old tomato stakes, or whatever. I always recommend lights be as close to plants as possible to get maximum advantage of the PAR rating coming out of here. However, as they grow, we can easily raise these guys up. This takes a second. I got chains on here. There's all kinds of daisy chain and ways to do this. On Amazon will sell you kits for raising and lowering LED light fixtures. However, simple chains work too, and leftover parts. So the reason I like this, mainly the flexibility and the low cost, and it works with a little light situation where I can take it when I need to. Okay, let's go back to the presentation. So there's an example. So this picture, let me know, Diego, when they see the presentation.
Yep, you're good. Presentation.
Okay, so here's a picture here where we are daisy chaining fixtures together. You can get 5 of these fixtures daisy chained one to another. And there's a picture of the clip. And like I said, we just mounted this to leftover greenhouse parts. And there's 2 of these clips per light fixture. And then there's an example of the color we're getting here, which is, for me, it's good for middle of winter. If these guys wouldn't not have had supplemental LEDs, they would not be as dark. Okay, so that's the end of my LED portion here, first tool. And let's go ahead and answer some questions. And I'm gonna move to a place where I think I'll get a better connection. So hopefully the presentation stops going in and out. But maybe, Diego, if you could read some questions to me while I'm moving, that'd be a way to move ahead.
Sure, this first question is more of a macro question, and it is as follows. Do you usually find a process that needs to be leaned and buy the tools to fit the process, or do you tend to discover tools that streamline current processes?
Yeah, so my general suggestion is you want to be a greedy farmer. You want to find, from a lean point of view, there's muda in your process or waste, such as like bottlenecks, motion waste, that sort of thing. And so you want to find tools that target the specific waste that you have on your farm, okay? And every farm is going to have a unique setup, and the wastes are all different. And so to answer your question, what I usually do is have a process that I'm trying to improve, and then I'll shop. And so the LEDs would be one example where we are setting up our propagation house at this point. And so I want to find, and so we know the bottlenecks in that propagation house. And so I'm shopping very specifically for tools that alleviate problems that we have.
Here's one question regarding the tubes. Where did you get them? I think you said Noltz's?
Yeah, go to Noltz Midwest Produce, and they have a PDF online catalog. And it's one of the last items in that catalog. Yeah, so you have to scroll through 30 or so pages to get to it. And this is an Amish or Mennonite business, and you cannot order online. You'll have to get a catalog from them or call in the order. But they're great to work with.
What's your current timing for leaving those on? Do you leave the lights on 24/7?
No, I keep them on from 6 in the morning till about 8 o'clock at night. I don't want to get too, I give them more light than they'll have after they're transplanted. However, I don't want to get them too far off of the schedule that they're going to have at the point at which you transplant them.
Here's a question. I'll give my thoughts on this because I have experienced this. Would it be possible to use a standard LED strip fixture with a red or blue filter? I don't know. I've tried compact fluorescent bulbs. I've tried LED like shop lights, and I've tried LED plant lights. And I can tell you the LED grow lights blew everything away by far, and it was well worth the investment. There's no plant stretching. The color is way better. What are your thoughts on using a LED with a filter?
I mean, it depends how much time and money and energy you want to put into experimentation. And my way of thinking is that these companies have gone to great efforts to do the research, and I'm happy to pay a little extra to not have to fabricate my own system. So I think it's worth it to pay a little more to get actual LED grow lights.
How do you water around them without getting them wet? Just be careful?
Yeah, in general, I don't do overhead. I don't water overhead. So I've got leak-proof support trays underneath those plants. And so I'm going to water into those leak-proof support trays and bottom water underneath.
Have you ever tried T8 fixtures, and do you have any frame of reference of T8 versus LED?
Sure, I have T8s that I'm using, and I'm switching out to these LED fixtures. But T8s are awesome. They're a low cost. They can be low cost, and at this point, they're a bit lower cost than the LEDs. I think the LEDs have these other advantages. Flexibility of their installation, the longevity, how long they'll last. I think that it's worth it now to switch to LEDs. However, T8s are great, and if you have them, you may as well keep on using them until they quit.
One thing I know from being around some of these lights is they can be harsh on your eyes. They're not often fun to work around. Do you use any sort of eye protection or glasses with those, or do you not notice it?
Yeah, you need to purchase, if you're going to work a lot with them, there are lights that you should purchase. I'm sorry, there are special sunglasses that for working around the LEDs. They are harder on your eyes on the long term.
And we'll do this last one, then we'll roll on to section 2. Do you discuss the construction and setup of your prop house in the lean farming course?
Yeah, I do. In fact, you see all the systems we use in that prop house. It's the most expensive piece of real estate on most market farms because you've got heaters and fans, and you need to have it very well controlled if you're going to make a living at this business. And so it's an important piece of real estate not to get wrong. You want to be right about that. And one thing about the course, the books are awesome. I'm an English major. I love books. However, that one advantage of an online format is I can go in and update it as needed. And so, for instance, I'm updating that course with this LED information. And so you'll see updated stuff too, but I do show you how to build a propagation house.
Okay, let's roll on to section 2, Two Bad Cats Tine Weeder.
Okay, so there's been a lot of interest in this tool here, and it is the right tool for the right application and a total waste of money in the wrong application. So let me explain. We prefer the biggest one they have. It's a heavier tool and you can cover more area. And I use it for two things. Scarification. So I'll just show you this video was on, had this on Instagram a week or so ago, but I do this on a weekly basis in here to prevent mold, mildew, fungus, mushrooms, that sort of thing from growing on the soil surface in the dark winters that we have here in northern Indiana. We get a lot of lake effect cloud cover from Lake Michigan, and we have about as much sun as Seattle has in the winter. And so this really helps scarify the surface. And it's like a chicken scratching it along the surface and just keeping that soil surface healthier. And let me show you another video here. So I dug up some old videos from last winter, and I'm applying more pressure on here, and I'm not using this for scarification, but for weed prevention. So the important thing is here that there are no weeds have not yet come up, and I don't want them to. And the first year on a farm, we had just crazy weed pressure here, as often happens. The seed bank was just so high. And so to do this process, it was the only way I made it through that first growing season without pulling my hair out, because we were able to prevent so many weeds from coming up. Now, once they have come up, once they're at the white thread stage, it's often, you can get them up with a tine weeder. However, I wouldn't count on it. You can, it does work sometimes, but it's best to use this tool before weeds even come up. Okay, so you can hear there's a train station about a mile or so from our farm. And you always have a train whistle in the background. But I want to show you this just to show you can go over large plants. Let me back that up to the beginning and just see how large these kales are here. And this is maybe about the limit. I would have gone over these one or two more times. But you see that action, these are curved tines. So the curve on the front of the tine is going to gently lay over the plant, which helps prevent the plant from actually being ripped up by the tool. And then this is going to get out the tiny weeds, the white thread weeds perhaps, but mostly I'm using it to prevent weeds from coming up to begin with. And my best tip for this tool is that you have to have soil that's soft. Okay, and if you have hard soil like clays, I tried this down at Ray Tyler's place last year, it just did not work. That Tennessee clay is not the right soil type for this tool, and Colorado clay might be tough too. If you're using a compost-based system like we have, and you have fairly soft soil, and those teeth can get in and move soil one direction or the other, then this can be a great tool for scarification and weed prevention. show you one more time. Okay, so I've got less than 1 acre in production, and it takes less than half an hour to do the whole property here with that tool. And so about once a week in springtime, the last couple of growing seasons, I'll send someone out just to lick the whole property, and just a way to prevent weeds, especially in the beginning stage of a farm. So let's take a couple of questions on that tool.
I think the tool is a great tool. It's one that I've noticed become increasingly popular on farms. We're actually going to be carrying the TerraTech tine weeder very shortly. It's got stiffer springs, which I think counteracts some of the problems of the two bad cats on harder soils, heavier clay soils, from talking to TerraTech. So watch for that one. That's another version that will be out there. But I don't see any other questions on that, so let's roll on to the seeder.
So the Jang seeder is my go-to seeder, and it's a tool we use all the time because it's just an unstoppable tool. You can even train a 1.5-year-old you see here to use it. And the idea here is that it's very consistent because it's made out of durable parts. There's a bicycle chain that inside of here, and it's going to singulate your seeds. It's going to drop seeds at a perfect spacing. The trick is getting this information correct. And so this is updated from my book even, because we're constantly updating our systems. And this is the current sprocket sighting that we're using, and the roller model that we're using. We simplified, you'll see our sprockets. We always use 11 in the front and 10 in the rear. And for all of our crops, it gives us about the right amount of spacing that we're looking for here. And then you just have to get the right roller in there and make sure your brush is set at the right place too. And the best, and this is a guide that can definitely help. However, the best is to use your own experience, because seed size varies so much. So my spinach, Gazelle, is the spinach that I use, and the LJ24 is perfect on it. If you're using a larger size spinach, a kookaburra, or some of the other larger spinaches, then LJ24 might not be the right roller setting here. However, it's a great tool, and can't recommend that one enough. And you can certainly buy gangs of them. You can gang 3 of these up together. Friend Jeremy Mueller gangs 5 of these up together. He bought a 3-row version, put 2 in the middle. And for me, and I've tried the gangs, I prefer a smaller one because it's so easy to move around the property. And it's that technology with a human face thing, where I want everyone on the farm to be able to use it. And I don't mind walking up and down the rows multiple times. We're not such a large farm that that there's a lot of waste in that.
Yeah, here's a question that comes up quite a bit. Do you use pelleted seed with the Yang, and do you ever find the need to use pelleted seed with it? One of the advantages I've always heard we found is it's great for raw seed, but a lot of people have pelleted seed. They think they need to use pelleted seed with it. What's your thought?
I mean, you can see here carrots. I use the LJ24 with pellets on carrots. And what I do is I like to plant carrots as pellets when I know they're going to get good germination. So I usually do my first carrot planting as soon as possible, probably mid to late February, most seasons. And because then they'll come up quickly before the weeds have a chance to come up. During midsummer, I switch to raw seeds. And so it is true that pellets can get caught up in here. However, I think what happens is people are not using rollers that are deep enough. The LJ24 is a huge roller. It's got a big divot in there. And then we would use the smaller size pellets, the 13 millimeter, I'm sorry, the 11 millimeter instead of the 13 millimeter pellets too. And that seems to help in the roller size that we have here.
Here's another question. Do you ever change the plow depth according to crop type?
I don't. I've never found a need to.
Okay. Do you ever use it with beets? I actually posted something on Instagram and the Paper Potco about beets and direct seeding them over the weekend. And a lot of growers chimed in. They are using the Yang for beets. I want to say the YYJ roller, but I'm not positive. You can check in their comments. Do you ever try and direct seed beets with it?
I know, to be honest, I always transplant my beets. And I do beets in 72 cell plugs, and I'll put 3 to 4 seeds in each, then transplant those out about 9 inches from one another. And then I will use paper pot method to do beet production too, but only in the early springtime when I've got good transplanting conditions.
Yeah, I think that was kind of the common thing I heard is when you have cheaper seed or when you want to just try it, go with the direct seeding, but most people are transplanting. I asked a lot of growers, and most of them are transplanting beets. JM, Eric Schultz, seemed like everybody I could get in touch with was transplanting. F24 with raw carrot seed. Somebody saying they like the XY24, F24, no problems with that?
No, for me, I don't. As long as you have a low brush setting and keep that 11 front, 10 in the rear. For me, that has worked with the size of seeds that we would have. Now, I've used the other one too, the XY one. That's going to space them out a little more. That's a fine way to go too. I would try both of them, see what you like. But for us in our trials, the F24, I got a heavier stand.
Okay. I know this from talking to you today on the podcast. You plant a lot in compost. Do you ever feel the need to use the double disc opener for chunky or mulch soil?
Yeah, I don't. And so, like I was saying on the podcast, I'm not, we consider ourselves a very low-till farm. I'm not a no-till farm. And one of the reasons is that we use compost that can be chunky sometimes. And so what I'll do is I'll take the BCS, I've just got that 710 with an 18-inch tiller behind it. I'll just very quickly go over the surface, just an inch or two to break up chunks if I need to. And sort of like a tilter. The tilter took too much time and would gum up. And I found that just a skim pass with the BCS, and you can now buy these precision depth rollers for behind the BCS. If you're worried about going too deep, I just hold it up the right height. Anyhow, I have found that takes care of any chunkiness problems that I might have. And then using that 30-inch Austrian bed rake too, with the curved tines, is a great way to pull out anything 1 inch or more in diameter to get your bed prepped for any piece of equipment that might be going in it.
Okay, here's one that was asked quite a few times. Do you have any experience using Johnny's tine rake that they sell, which I think is like a lawn thatch rake? It's about $35. Comparing that to the Two Bad Cats tine weeder, from my research and talking to a lot of people, the big curvy springs on the Two Bad Cats give you a lot more float and weave through the crops better. What are your thoughts on that? Because it's about $35 versus say $280. That's a big difference in price. Can you justify that price based on feature?
For me, I would say I do have that. I do have the Johnny's tine rake, and I did use it for several growing seasons. And the Two Bad Cats version, the versatility of it, it just blows the Johnny's one out of the water. I can go, like I couldn't have gone over the large kale plants with the Johnny's one, for instance. I showed you the video of. And it's just more effective too. And the curve that the Two Bad Cats tine rake would have is more gentle on the plants.
With gentleness on that tine rake, do you have any issues ever having crops getting pulled out, snagged on drip lines, caught up in the paper chains?
Oh yeah, that all happens. And so you need to be sensitive when you use it, and sensitive how much pressure you're putting on the tool. The first video I showed where I was going over baby salad greens that are maybe 3 weeks out of the ground, I'm having a light touch on that. I'm actually probably lifting that rake just a little. And then with the larger plants, no, I'm not worried about the rake pulling out the larger plants after the roots are already in.
One question on your little chart here that you have up for the JP1, salad turnips are not on there. What would you recommend for salad turnips?
Yeah, I hazard to give a recommendation. I always transplant my salad turnips. I would probably treat them like arugula. I'd start with the X24 with a low brush setting and see if that gives you the spacing you need, because those seeds are tiny. And spacing is pretty important if you want full-size turnips, which we need in our markets.
Another on the tine weeder, a lot of people asking, you know, like what weeds it's useful for combating. And I think maybe the macro category for that is it's aimed at getting the white thread stage weeds, getting all weeds early. It's not going to pull out deep established weeds.
That's true. And it's not going to pull out all types of weeds. That's why I say it's best for preventing the weeds to begin with than it is for actually extracting weeds after they've already germinated, even if they're at the white thread stage. So the best time to use this is before you even see weeds. And chickweed, for instance, can have a root system that kind of digs down in and weasels its way. I haven't found that tine weeder to pull up chickweed, even if it's tiny. Lamb's quarters is a little easier. It's got a weaker root system. So yeah, weeds are all different. There's all types, and it's going to be more effective on some than others.
Your sprocket settings on the JP1, somebody said they thought in the past you used 914. Did you go to a standardization of 1110?
That's correct. I now use 1110 for all of my production. And I'll tell you that I'm experimenting flipping those two to put 10 in the front and 11 in the rear, and that's going to space them out by maybe another 1/4 of an inch. Doing that for the low light levels in the greenhouse. So I did do part of the winter greenhouse where I flipped the two, where 10 was front and 11 was in the rear, and that did seem to help to space things out a little more when I know we'll have low light conditions here. But if that's not an issue, then 1110 has worked pretty universally for 2 growing seasons here. That's why I'm now recommending it.
Okay, that clears the board. So on to the next one.
Okay, so the germination checker. And this, I've seen all kinds of iterations of this. I've been on lots and lots of farms since I introduced the idea of this germination chamber in the lean farm. And the things I see growers doing that they shouldn't is having wood in here and having it not insulated enough. And so an old chest freezer makes an ideal germination chamber or an old upright refrigerator because you've got a door that works. So it's going to be tight and it's going to be insulated, and you can disinfect it every so often, which we do every couple months. We'll disinfect the surfaces in here. And then again, using leftover greenhouse parts for shelves is a great option in here. And so we've got wiggle wire channels. And what we do is just stack our trays one on top of the other. We can usually stack 10 or 12 trays on top of one another before they start falling one way or the other. We're gonna get 2 stacks of trays, one right next to the other in here. An easier way to do this is to just use an old crock pot. And then by now, Amazon, you can buy all kinds of plug-in thermostats with probes. So you just plug that crock pot, you mount your thermostat to the side of the chamber, like I have mine mounted here, then run that probe inside the chamber. And you see the probe dangling just inside the chamber. And then you just plug your crock pot into that thermostatic device. And that's a very low cost, very quick way to set up one of these guys here. And you do have to check it every morning and evening. We're checking the chamber to make sure that we don't have spaghetti noodles in here. There's no light in here, so you got to pull them out pretty quick. However, the online course, I tell you exactly the temperature settings on here and exactly how we're using it. However, I just want to mention it at this point to say that if you're going to get rid of defect from your production system, and that's a waste in the lean systems, waste of defect is one of the worst types of waste. And this is a way to get just about every seed that you purchase up and running and germinated. So you can get very close to 100% germination in here with a chamber method versus trying to germinate seeds out in the open. So it's been a very, very loved tool on our farm. Okay, and then I can't do this seminar without at least mentioning the paper pot transplanter, which again is a wonderful tool in the right situation, and it's a total waste of money in the wrong situation. And so I want to help you think about whether you should be getting it or not. For one, you need to have soils that are loose enough that they can handle the action of the paper pot transplanter. There's a furrow underneath here that's cutting a furrow, and you need to be able to pull you see the wheels on here, need to be able to pack that soil back in around the crop that's being transplanted. And so again, another reason why we don't consider those exclusively no-till is that our soil conditions, there is some benefit to tilting just very across the surface every so often to prep the soil for the paper pot transplanter. And some farms I know don't need to do that. So it just depends on your local conditions. Let me show you a couple of ways that we use this. Basil is certainly a crop that we had hand transplanted for several growing seasons, and is much more efficient to transplant basil with the paper pot method. Skip ahead here. So when you pull out the chain, the Japanese would have chopsticks that they would have in their back pocket so you can poke in. Staples will work. You can just pack soil in around your crop too. My best tip for using it, and soils look to be a little dry in here, but what I try to do is I irrigate pretty heavy before transplanting because I want wet soil. Your plants will be much more successful. And I irrigate as heavy as I can until soil would start to gum up the equipment, okay? And then I would be soaking these trays before transplanting too, in leak-proof trays underneath them. Okay, so a couple of standard uses would be Hakurei turnips. Like I said, we transplant all of our Hakurei turnips, and these are 6 inches, and then we've got 4 to 6 seeds in each. And we can have easily get turnips by late March from our greenhouses, and by late April or May from field production, even as far north as we are here. We're rolling back tarps in the springtime, and by March we can have a garden up instantly by transplanting. And if you're in the Salanova business, I usually direct seed my greens, but if you're into planting heads, Salanovas, multi-leaf heads, then by all means, paper pot them. It's much faster than popping those guys in by hand. And so look at the crops here: head lettuce, romaine, green onions, baby greens, turnips. So if these are your crops, and you grow a lot of these crops and you have the right soil conditions, this might be the right tool for you. If you grow watermelon, butternut squashes, tomatoes, peppers, and not these other crops, and this might not be a wise investment. And so you can see we're growing these crops, tucked them in between the rows of tomatoes with the paper pot transplanter here, and will let us pay for the heat in our tomato greenhouse. This picture taken in March, and by March 25th, we've got full-size crops, and we just couldn't do that by direct seeding. And we just couldn't transplant efficiently enough by hand. And so the paper pot transplanters opened up new market avenues for us, and that's why I'm most excited about it. Here's one great example is legumes, green beans, early green beans. You can hand transplant them. It takes a long, long time. I've done it. But paper pot them 2 inches, apart. And we put a couple rows in a 30-inch bed. And then we can have May green beans at our market a month before anyone else has green beans at market. Okay, and then same with our outdoor beans. We can get them. We could not get green beans to germinate early May here oftentimes. However, it's warm enough that we can grow them, especially under row covers. So another example where paper potting makes sense. This looks like cilantro perhaps going in here, and it's a great 2-person tool if you got a kid. You do have to be pushing the same direction. Okay, so I got a little bonus tool here. Not really a tool, but I'm going to throw it in, visual planting systems. And Lean is all into keeping your systems as visual as possible. And so I go over all the visual systems we use in the online course, but I want to just show this one here. It's our visual for our farm for this spring. This is information that used to be stuck in my back pocket on a spreadsheet or on my laptop on a spreadsheet, saying what crops are going in when, the growing systems we might use. And it's much better if you have any people you're working with, even if you got one other person you're working with, to make that system visual. Hang it up so everyone can see what's happening. We have 2 colors of magnets here so we can indicate whether we're using tarps or row covers, and I have drawn in where our header lines are for irrigation. Whatever production information you feel would be useful to your team, throw it on here and get it out of your head and get it out of your laptop. And I didn't even create an Excel spreadsheet for the farm this year. We just did it all visually, and we're loving it. I can't recommend it enough. And we do tasks like this too. Instead of having like tasks, we used to use cards for tasks. That would tell people the tasks that needed to be accomplished and where to do it, and some important information about the task. And the problem is that those cards are tucked in people's pockets. And so if we can write our task up here, and so everyone has a visual of the work that needs to happen. And then when you complete a task, it goes from a green magnet to a red magnet. It's a way to visualize the farm and keep everyone on track. So I wanted to throw this up here at the end. Thank you very much. It's been a great webinar. We probably have time for a couple more questions if anyone has questions about LEDs or whatever.
Yeah, here's a couple. One related to paper pot. What level of tillage do you find appropriate to successfully transplant in? Somebody's saying, I'm assuming the only way to use this in heavy soils would be with a rototiller. What are your thoughts on that?
I'd say you have two options. If you have clay, tilling beforehand is certainly one option, and then heavily composting and keeping that compost on the surface. Don't work it in too much. Would be your second option to loosen it. But that's a great point. At some soils, you just have to till ahead of this tool.
Paper pots don't have standard, paper pot chains don't have standard lengths that end in nice numbers like 50, 100. If you were setting up a brand new farm now, would you consider sizing bed lengths to match paper chains?
I actually did set up our farm so that four chains, 6 inches, four of the 6-inch chains in one of our beds, it will fill one of the beds that we have. Okay, and that's the most common spacing we'd have for head lettuce and turnips and such. However, not all plants we're using the paper pot system with, want that 6-inch spacing. And so that's a limitation of the system. And so what we do is have usually a bonus. I hate to waste anything. And so if we have a foot or 2 or 5 feet left over, we have a bonus plot, a bed that we'll put those leftovers into. And we also have a home garden too that's not part of our production space. So we'll often put those crops in our home garden.
The online masterclass, a question regarding that. How in depth do you get into the market cycle of each specific plant, from direct seeding to transplant to management and harvesting? How much do you cover specifics of plants?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the course begins with lean concepts and talks about all the tools we're using, why we chose them, talks about how to set up your infrastructure and what not to get wrong with your infrastructure. You have to have the right size irrigation lines, that sort of thing. And then it moves into crop production. And the way I do it is I go crop by crop. And so I have a whole lesson on turnips with, say, 8 or 10 videos of turnips throughout the production season of turnips. And the topics I cover with each of the vegetable crops would be the variety selection, this timing, when we put seeds in, the soil conditions, the fertility regimen that we have with each of our crops, mid-season maintenance, irrigation, pests, and then when we harvest, how we harvest, and then how we market the crops. And so I try to be pretty comprehensive with each of those crops. And like I said, try to film it during the growing season so you can see each of these steps happening. And it's not just me sitting there talking.
Here's another one. What book explains the visual planting system or how to get more information on it? I don't think your books cover that visual planting system like you showed, but does the online masterclass? So
yeah, like I said, a problem with books is that they're always a snapshot. And the books were a great snapshot of our farm 4 years ago. And the online course, I've updated to include more of the visual systems and lean management systems that we've incorporated since the books have come out. And so, yeah, there is a lesson on visual system management in the course. And I do show all the visual systems that we're using.
Here's one somebody's asked. Have you ever used the TerraTech Transplanter for paper pots? And if so, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, I'll give you a couple quick thoughts because we looked at carrying that before we decided to go with the Japanese. It's significantly heavier. Like the Japanese transplanter weighs 27 pounds, the TerraTech weighs 43 pounds. It's a lot heavier. It's also balanced very differently, which I think makes it harder to pull in the field. And the other main difference on that are the way that it closes around the chains. It has these paddles that more push up the soil instead of these angled sweeps that on the back. And I've talked to Romaine at TerraTech. I think they're going to be making sweeps for it at some point. They primarily designed that transplanter around what they would say are heavy European soils. That's why they made it like it is. I've heard people use both, and I've had people say they've got the TerraTech and swapped it out for ours because they didn't like it. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I've used the TerraTech, and I have a very strong preference for the Japanese transplanter. It's technology with a human face behind it. It interfaces very easily with the humans using it. Anyone on our farm can pick it up, slug it around, move it, and use it. And I didn't find that to be the case with the TerraTech at this point. I know they're working to improve it.
Okay. All right. I think that's going to be all the time we have here. Again, for people that want to learn more about your master class, learn more from you there, what's the best place to go?
Well, yeah, the Lean Farm School, the leanfarmschool.com. And then I've got a lot of free lessons up to you can click around, get a feel for what the course is like and what's in those lessons. But I'm excited about it. I think that I feel good about the content. And I wish that a course like, and we try to price it too at a high value price point. So you get a lot of value, a lot of information for the price. And I wish that I just wish something like that had been available when I started farming. So avail yourselves to it. And thank you again. Appreciate everyone logging in here. So what this is essentially, this is preview content for stuff that's in my online course. And over the winter, Rachel and I just finished up production, put some tweaks into the online course, and we're really excited about what we have. And it's really unique because what we're doing is combining lean production, and lean is the most powerful production and management system that there is. And we're layering that on top of cutting edge market farming information techniques. And so you get the best of management system and you get some great growing techniques. And we're not perfect. However, we've been growing for 9 growing seasons, and we feel really good about the content that we have. We filmed it during the growing season. We didn't have, expensive film crew come in. However, what you get is like raw footage of us during the growing season. And we filmed it actually while we were building our barn house and putting up our greenhouse. And so you see how we set up the farm. And so there's a lot of great content. And this is great for micro farms. If you're looking to farm on 200, 500 acres, it's probably not the right course for you. However, we're doing it, making a living with a very slim cast of characters. It's just the two of us, me and Rachel, and then we've got a couple of workers who help us in the growing season. And so if you're looking for a low capital way to begin a farm and looking for great information, then this is the course. And I'm offering up until, this is our Valentine's Day special, up until February 14th, 30% off. And the code is here, LOVE30.